Hello Giants fans, welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. The Giants beat the A's 9-5 today. Alex Wood started, he pitched 5 1/3 innings, and he gave up 3 runs, 2 of them were earned, so I'd say we give him a C for that start. Whether he belongs in the rotation, he probably has more to prove. Jacob Junis pitched 2 scoreless innings. Maybe Junis should be in the rotation, and Wood should be in the bullpen. I think the Giants at least can look at opposing matchups and decide which pitcher's stuff, just looking at all the pitches that each pitcher throws, when they throw them, and how the hitters do, taking into account launch angle and everything. If the Giants really do the homework, maybe they can just maximize wins when that 5th spot in the rotation comes up by alternating Wood and Junis as starters based on what the needs are for specific competition. No 2 pitchers' deliveries are the same, and some are more similar than others, but there should be a way when there's a question about who's going to occupy a spot in the rotation. And I've mentioned this before, 6-man rotation is not the way to do it. That's going to take starts away from Logan Webb and Ross Stripling. The Giants cannot afford to do that. And even Alex Cobb, he could be really good for the Giants in 2023. At least that's what I hope. The answer is not to take starts away from them, but it might be to kind of alternate that 5th spot in the rotation just around what they can do to optimize it. And they have video technology at the ballparks now, and they can probably provide some analysis on how hitters swing and when they're facing a lineup that hits for more power and when they're, and you could be looking at fastball hitters and which lineups have trouble with the breaking ball. And if you just try your best, and obviously each individual hitter is going to be different on opposing teams, so that's not going to be perfect, but the Giants probably do have the opportunity to look at opposing lineups kind of one by one in making their decisions about who's going to start. I'm not sure that they need to lock somebody into the rotation at this point. They could always have just a couple of swingmen. That might be the best option for them. I think probably the best thing for the rotation is to have 4 locks, and then that 5th spot be kind of a swingman spot, depending on how things are likely to go. But yeah, Wood and Junis, their ERAs are fairly similar up to this point in spring training. The thing Wood did do well today was strikeout 10. You just have to take a look at that. It's always good when starters put up high strikeout numbers. That's not at all to say that you can't get outs by having the ball put in play, but when a pitcher strikes out a hitter, it's like completely in his control. He doesn't have to depend on the defense doing everything right. So that's what we're looking at with the high strikeout totals. And that, I think, is just what Wood did really well today. Brett Auerbach had 4 hits today. I haven't talked a whole lot about him, but his average is high, and that's a good thing to see. David Villar hit a home run, so he's, you always see that, and then maybe I feel a little guilty about saying this guy's got to be a bench player, but we really have to look at that and say that's good. Hey, if the Giants are going to have some bench players who are really going to be quality players who on a roster that didn't have any better guys at those positions, they definitely be starters. A really good team will often have starter level players on the bench. I hope you realize that. And the Giants, they're not a really great team heading into 2023, but since at least they seem to have a whole ton of depth at some of these positions, if they do have starters that are just really able to hit the ball hard, and bench players who are kind of either close behind, backing them up, or just they're still solid themselves, that could actually be really good for the Giants. So David Villar hit a home run, and if Casey Schmidt makes the roster, I think Villar should be in that bench role unless he's able to move to another position. But yeah, that's probably the way it should go. But anyway, it was good to see Villar's power. And the same thing for Peterson. He's the hitter that I think every Giants fan, really, almost everyone, really has it in their mind that Peterson's kind of the hitter the Giants are going to be counting on. And whether we're just believing that because he's the DH, or if we should really expect him to be better than Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto and if we're really expecting Jock Peterson to be better, it's too early to tell, but I think the plan was kind of for Peterson to come in and be the best hitter, and we don't, and the other guys, if they're playing defense, they can at least be a little more well-rounded there. So if the Giants didn't get their offensive contribution from Peterson, then it would be kind of a big failure on that one-year contract they signed him to. But the Giants specifically signed Peterson to hit, so he's going to need to hit, and he's going to need to hit for power. So the Giants' record this spring training is up to 14-14. They beat the A's today, and I know the A's aren't too difficult of a team to beat, but it was still good to see the Giants scoring 9 runs today. So their record's tied in spring training, and we'll see how they really finish spring training, and hopefully they can pick this up, and so that we can kind of trust their roster going into the season when we see that they're able to win games, and if they can really come out of spring training with a winning record, I think that would be a good sign. I mean, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is getting their guys' work in and evaluating individual players. But I'll still be glad if I see that they do come out of the regular season with a winning record. Now, there are just a lot of projection models that have come out on how the Giants are going to, what they're going to do in 2023, just like they do with every team. There are a bunch of things. There's Zips, there's Pacoda, there's Baseball Prospectus. And the question, of course, that we kind of have to deal with immediately is which one of those is best? First of all, I think the first point that needs to be made is they're all really on the right track, and that they're centered around the right idea, that the Giants are going to be kind of around the 80s. We know, because almost all projection systems pretty much agree on where the Giants are going to be around in 2023. I think a roster like this, you can predict pretty well, but there are still differences, and in the minds of Giants fans, the difference between systems like Pacoda and Zips, and in the minds of Giants fans, that's really due to the fact that in this spectrum, you're a little bit past 80 wins. In that spectrum, it's a few wins that can make all the difference, and that's what we're really expecting it to be for the Giants. We know, and now it's another question whether we have to concede that the projection job has really been done as well as it can, and that as far as projection systems go, we know as much as we're going to be able to know. I mean, I do think that since so much work goes into this, and they have, these guys are experts in their field, I do think that there is some precision there, that their methods don't agree, but I think that the precision of their conclusions, some of that is legitimate. So I'm not saying that all projection systems are the same, or that there's not merit to seeing, if we could, the different methods they've used and exactly the different ways they've come up with their different conclusions. So whether we're just saying the projection job has really been done by everybody as well as it can be, and it's certainly true that the issue here is that that the projection systems, that they are they'd be probably considered in agreement if you were talking about a team who was not going to go anywhere and just maybe be in the 60s or whatever. But for the Giants, that's not the case. I mean, reason we feel we need to know exactly is because they're going to end up in a situation where a few wins are going to make all the difference. And I think it's highly possible that when the season's over, they'll be maybe just 1, 2, or 3 wins on the inside or the outside of the playoff spot. So it's these things that are going to make all the difference. And I'm not saying that these kind of things can't be predicted with precision. I just think we have to understand that it is that few wins that if the Giants can pick up here, it's going to make all the difference. And again, probably Zips has one way of looking at it that would make them specifically likely to win 88 games, and Pacoda would legitimately disagree and say, no, they're going to win 82 because of certain other factors. I do know that Zips has just put a lot of stock into the Giants' depth, which I think is very real. They do have depth at, pretty much every position, and they can handle a lot, but I mean, no projection system can be, 100% trusted on accuracy, and they have a whole bunch of different ways of doing it, but I'm just bringing that up because the situation really is that, it could be that there's a huge difference between 82 and 88 wins. That 6-win difference, it would be huge in the Giants' case, so we know from looking and evaluating the roster, we know how they're likely to end up. But the question is just that tiny bit of difference. Which way is it going to go? And I think there are a lot of things you have to bring into the factor, but I think you have to really bring in everything, and that would obviously include the bullpen, like whether they're going to consistently be able to lock down games when the Giants are ahead. How many ninth inning saves are they going to be blowing? And that can't happen a whole lot in 2023. They're going to have to, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, when they have the lead, they're really going to have to be able to hold it consistently. It just can't happen a lot that they blow that lead. That's just, since it's so close for the Giants and a few wins could just be everything for them. That's one reason why that's so important, and obviously just everything happening at the right time, whether it's offense or defense, that just that they don't mess up at the wrong times and all that. That all I think is going to be huge for the Giants. So they have what they have right now. It's a roster that's capable, I believe, of making the playoffs, but things kind of have to go right, and they have to pick up just the few games that I think we can just say are up for grabs. So I really can't say whether these prediction systems are able to bear any further on the real little specifics of whether the Giants are ultimately going to come on the inside or the outside of the playoffs, whether they're going to lock down that wild card spot. I don't think that we can really know if the projection systems, if the predictions have merit there, if they know. It's clear they know what they're talking about on the just kind of broad scale with the Giants roster. We know essentially what that's going to be. But what we don't know is, we don't know, first of all, if anybody knows what they're talking about in regard to, is it going to be 83 or 87? How many wins is that little gap, that small gap? Are the Giants going to be able to cross that gap or not? They were not able to last year. So essentially, what I'm saying is that 2023 is going to be a similar season to 2022. But whether the Giants are able to jump that gap, I don't think we can know if these projection models, if the people who run these and come out with these predictions, I don't think there's any way for us to know if they know what they're talking about in regards to that small gap that can make all the difference. It's a unique situation. Take a team like the Dodgers. Pretty sure they're going to win the National League West. I mean, I don't want to be disappointing or discouraging and all that, but it seems that the Dodgers are going to win the National League West. It's like they do every year. If you're talking about the Dodgers, that's where we're probably just not going to think about like which prediction is going to be the most accurate for them because they're winning the division anyway. But the Giants, that's where it comes into play, where every win has just a significant increase and every loss has such a significant decrease on the probability of them making the playoffs. In September, I can almost absolutely guarantee that September is going to be one of the closest postseason races for the Giants that you've ever seen in a long time. I can almost guarantee that. 2022, we kind of knew they were out of it, but 2023, I don't think that we're going to be able to tell the outcome before September. September is going to be a nerve-wracking month this year. I can just predict that right now. I can just about guarantee it. I believe it's going to be one of the closest postseason races you've seen in a long time. In fact, I think the final week is going to be hectic in terms of are they making it or are they not. This battle to make the postseason the Giants are in, it's going to take them until the final week of September. But now we're back to the question. These guys who are making these predictions, do they know what they're talking about in terms of this small gap that could be crossed, or they fail to do it in the final week of the regular season? Maybe they do. I mean, prediction systems can be extremely accurate. Maybe they do. That's what I just don't think that we can know. It's what's going to make the difference, but whether that can be predicted or not, and it might be because what kind of talent levels the Giants have, but you don't know what a player's going to do physically and mentally on a specific day. Certainly how they're going to perform in a clutch situation, or certainly not how they're going to perform in a clutch situation or a real big game when it's on the line. You don't know how your pitcher is going to go about his game plan, or the hitters, like what pitches they're going to try to drive. There are things that can't be predicted until the time, and that's why I'm saying if we're in a postseason race that gets to the final few days, then Giants are going to have to look at it, I think, right then and make sure that everybody does everything right. And 2020 was a year where it was truly like the final, up to the final day, the Giants were in the race for the postseason. They just could not win a second game against the Padres after beating them the first game of the series. It was just, they could not do it. It was despicable back then, and that can't happen again in 2023. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Also, please leave your questions and comments. You know where to do it. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.